Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Mishnah Mastery. To the wonderful people watching on Zoom and to the also wonderful people watching on YouTube, welcome. Good evening. We are going to do the final chapter of Masechet Sukkah tonight. So let's roll up our sleeves and let's get cracking. We're going to get it up for you on the screen over here. The final chapter, U'ah. As we've been saying for the last few weeks, our learning is Le'ilui Nishmas, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, Rabbi Yaakov Tzvi ben Reb David Aryeh. So we are going to start. And we're going to be talking about the Simchat Beit HaShoeva, the festivities that took place in the times of the Beis HaMikdash in Jerusalem. And it was a very, very festive occasion, and we're going to come to that a little bit soon. So the Simchas Beis HaShoeva was the celebration of the Shoeva, which is the drawing of the water, because they used to have these water libations called the Nisuch Hamayim, which were very important, very symbolic, and very celebrated. And so our Mishnah kicks off with chapter 5, Mishnah 1, Perek Hey, Mishnah Aleph. Hechalil chamisha v'shisha. The flute was for 5 or 6 days, depending on when Shabbos would fall. You see, the chalil, the flute, which is an indication of the Simchas Beis HaShoeva. If you recall, we've been in this structure of figuring out why certain things would take place for either one number of days or a different number of days. That was what we saw at the end of or during the last chapter, if you recall. And so now we're talking about the Chalil, the flute, would take place for either 5 or 6 days during Sukkah. Says the Mishnah, Zehu HaChalil Shel Beis HaShoeva. And this is the in reference to the flute, the festivities of the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, She'ena Doicha Lo Es HaShabbos V'Lo Es HaYom Tov. And it does not override Shabbos, and it does not override Yom Tov. Amru, they said about the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, Kol mi shelo ra'a Simchas Beis HaShoeva lo ra'a simcha miyamav. A person who has not had the privilege to see the festivities taking place in the Beis HaMikdash during Sukkot and all of the antics that would go on over there, if you haven't seen that, you've never seen true simcha in all your life, which is an amazing statement to say. Some of you will have stood under the chuppah with your children. Some of you may have stood under the chuppah with grandchildren, and you may have been extremely happy when your children were born, when your grandchildren were born, when you stood with them under the chuppah, whatever it might be. We probably all had occasions in our lives where we've been extremely happy, and yet the Mishnah is saying that if you have not seen the Simchas Beis HaShoeva in the Beis HaMikdash, you've never seen true simcha. Amazingly bold statement, but it just goes to show what an amazing atmosphere it really must have been. So let's hear a little bit about the atmosphere in the Beis HaMikdash as we go into Mishnah Beis. B'motzoi Yom Tov HaRishon, at the end of Yom Tov, at the end of the first day of Sukkot. Don't forget they keep 1 day in Eretz Yisrael, whereas we keep 2 outside of Israel. So at the end of first day Yom Tov, Yardu le'ezras Nashim, they would go down to the Ezras Nashim, the women's court, which is the area before the Azara, before the steps leading up to the main courtyard. Umesaknin sham tikun gadol, and they would make a great enactment, as it says there on the screen. In my notes, I have here as they basically made big renovations to cope with the numbers of people that were going to be coming. So they actually built scaffolding, they built a balcony so that the women would have a place to stand, so that they wouldn't be standing in the same area as the men. That whole courtyard would be filled with men. So they created a balcony for the women, a ladies' gallery, if you may, for the women to be able to stand up. The menorahs zahav hayusham, and they had huge menorahs, which is not the menorah of the Beis HaMikdash, but it means candlesticks. Huge, I guess like street lights, floodlights, however you would describe it. The menorahs shel zahav hayusham, they had these big candlesticks. The arba sefalim shel zahav, and they had 4 big jars of gold, baroshehen, at the top of each of these. Va'arba sulamas lekol echad ve'echad, and 4 ladders leading up to these 4 bowls around each of these 4 candlesticks, lampposts. Va'arba yeladim mepirchei kahuna, 4 kids of the Kohanim, uvidehem kadim shel shemen, and in their hands they would be holding jugs of oil, shel mea ve'esrin log, of 120 logs. So each of these bowls is holding 30 log of oil, which is a big amount. Shehein matilin lekol seifel v'seifel, and they would pour these jugs of oil into these big bowls. And then Mishnah Gimel, mibloei michnasei kohanim, from the from the worn out clothes of the kohanim, umehem yanehem, and from their belts, mehen hayu mafkin, they would spin wicks to put inside these bowls, uvahen hayu madlikin, and they would light these wicks. And there was not a single courtyard in the whole of Yerushalayim that was not illuminated by these lights. If you can imagine these like huge floodlights spinning light around Yerushalayim, illuminating the whole city. It was a big spectacle. Mishnah Daled, Chasidim, the pious ones, Va'anshe Maaseh, people of good deeds, the cream of the crop, the biggest, rabbis and Talmidei Chachamim, Hayu Merakdim Lefneihem Ba'avukos Shel Or Shabidehem. They let loose. And they would dance in the Azara at the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, and they would basically do what's it called, like fire dancing and fire shows. Va'omrin lifneihem divrei shiros v'sishpachos, and they would be singing and praising Hashem. V'halavim b'kinoros, and the Levites would be on their harps, uvenevalim, and on their lyres, uvesiltayim, and on their cymbals of chatzosros, and on their trumpets, uvechlei shir belomispar, and an innumerable number of musical instruments. So it was a big party, lots of music, lots of dancing, lots of festivities, and it wasn't like these British weddings where the people who are closest to the bride and groom, the teenagers and the young adults, young professionals, whatever, they're forming the inner circle and they're going absolutely nuts. And then on the next circle out, you have like the parents nearest and dearest, and they're also getting like shuffling along a little bit. And then on the outside, you've got like the real kind of stiff British people who just kind of like plod along on the outside circle, and then outside of that you've got the altar cuckers who are just kind of like watching on like this, or standing there clapping along. Everyone was in it to win it. Even the saintly rabbis would be mucking in, would be getting involved, and they were feeling the simcha, and they were giving off the simcha. So much so that the Mishnah has already told us that if we haven't seen it, we haven't experienced true simcha. Continues the Mishnah. Al chamesh esrei malos hayodos me'ezras Yisrael le'ezras nashim. So these Leviim would be standing on the steps that go from the main Azara, the main courtyard where the Mizbeach is, and it goes down to this Ezras Nashim. They would stand on these 15 steps. Keneged chamisha asar shir hamalos shebat tehillim. The steps were taught parallel or correspond to the 15 chapters of Shir Hamalos, the ones that we read on a Shabbos afternoon when we read Tehillim on Shabbos afternoon. So we read those 15 chapters of Shir Hamalos, and back in the day when the Leviim, the Kohanim, one of them used to say the Shir Hamalos, they would start on the bottom step. They would say the first chapter, then they'd move up to the next step, say the next chapter, etc., until they get to the top. There's a lot of depth to those 15 chapters of Tehillim, and those steps correspond, parallel, whatever you want to say, to those 15 chapters. So they're standing on these chapters. They're standing on the chapters. They're standing on the stairs. And on these steps, the Leviim are standing on these steps, and they are playing their instruments, and they are singing their songs. Continues the Mishnah. There would be 2 Kohanim standing by the upper gate. Yored me'ezras Yisrael le'ezras nashim. The big gates, the big doors that lead from the main courtyard down to this Ezras Nashim. So there are two Kohanim standing there. And they're holding two trumpets in their hands. Kara Hagever, when the rooster would sound out in the morning, Taku v'heiriu v'taku, they would blow a tekiah, a teruah, and a tekiah. So we're going to see there's nine shofar blasts or trumpet blasts in total when it comes time to draw the water. So this is the first set of three. So the rooster crows, the cockerel goes, yeah, for those of you who don't know what one sounds like. Then they blow the tekiah, the teruah, and the tekiah. Higiu lamala asiris. They would reach the 10th step. Is that right? Is that... Where is it? Yeah, there you go. Okay, I'm good. When they reached the 10th step, taku v'heiriu v'taku, they would blow again, tekiah, teruah, tekiah. Higiu la'azara, once they get to the courtyard, taku v'heiriu v'taku, then they would blow again, tekiah, teruah, tekiah. Hayu tokin v'holchin, they would be blowing and they would be walking, and they would proceed. Ad shemagin l'shar hayotzei mizrach, until they reach the gate which leads out of the Beis Hamikdash eastwards. Higiu l'shar hayotzei mizrach, once they reach the gate that leads out eastwards, hafchu pnei l'ma'arav, they would turn westwards, va'amru, and they would say, Avoseinu shahayu b'makom hazeh, our forefathers who were in this place, talking now about the first Beis Hamikdash, achareihem el heichal Hashem, their backs would be turned to the temple of Hashem, ufneihem kedma, and their faces would face eastwards, v'heima mishtachavim kedma l'shamesh, and they would worship the sun in the towards the east. Va'anu laka einenu, but for us, our eyes are turned towards Hashem. Rabbi Yehuda says a slightly different nusach. Hayu shonin va'orim, they would repeat the last words and they would say, Anu laka ulaka einenu. We are to Hashem, and to Hashem our eyes turn. So, as we turn to Mishnah 5, to Mishnah Hey, we're now going to talk about all of the different types of shofar blasts or trumpet blasts that would take place in the Beis Hamikdash each and every single day. So, in all of the different things that we talk about, they always blew in sets of 3, which is why you have the Mishnah starting off as follows. They would never blow less than 21 notes in the Beis Hamikdash, meaning that they would be in 7 groups of 3. And they would never exceed 48 shofar blasts, trumpet blasts, during any particular day. So now we're going to break this down. B'chol yom, every day, every day there would be a minimum of 21 blasts in the Beis Hamikdash. Shalosh leptichas sha'arim, they would blow 3 times when they open the gates in the morning. V'teisha l'samish shachar, they would blow 9 times when they brought the tamid, the morning daily offering. V'teisha l'tamish shabein habayim, and they would blow a further 9 times when they bring the tamid offering, the daily offering in the evening. Uva musafin, on a day when they brought korban musaf, hayu mosifin od teisha, they would blow another 9 times. Uva erev Shabbos, hayu mosifin od sheish, on a Friday before Shabbos, they would add another 6 blasts, and it spells out what these were for. Shalosh lahavtil ha'amim lacha, the first 3 would be an indication that people should stop working. V'shalosh lahavdil ben kodesh lacha, and 3 were for the start of Shabbos, for the time which Shabbos was starting. So therefore, we're blowing 36 times on an Erev Shabbos. Continues the Mishnah. Erev Shabbos Shabbatach Chag. If we're dealing with Shabbos falling during the time of a Chag, Hayusham Arbayim Ushmana, then you would hear 48 blasts. Shalosh Leptichas Sha'arim, 3 when the gates were opened. Shalosh L'Shar Ha'elyon, 3 when they reach the upper gate. V'shalosh L'Shar Ha'tachton, 3 for the lower gate. V'shalosh So they're going to be hearing the 21 regular ones. They're going to be hearing the 15 blasts for Erev Shabbos, and they're going to be hearing 12 blasts for the filling of water. So there's Shalosh L'Ptichas Sharim, 3 at the opening to the gate, Shalosh L'Shah Elyon, 3 at the upper gate, Shalosh L'Shah Tafton, 3 at the lower gate, V'Shalosh L'Milui Hamayim, 3 when they're filling up water, V'Shalosh Al Gabei HaMizbeach, 3 when they're standing on the Mizbeach, on the altar, Teisha L'Tamish Shachar, 9 for the morning daily offering, Teisha L'Tamish Bein HaBayim, 9 for the afternoon offering, Teisha L'Musafin, 9 for the Musaf offering, Shalosh L'Havtil Esa'am Bin Amlacha, like on Erev Shabbos, 3 to stop people from working, V'Shalosh L'Havdil Ben Kodesh L'Chol, 3 to indicate that the start of Shabbos is coming. So that's how you reach your 48 blasts. Now, Mishnah Vav. Good luck with this one, please. Wish me luck. So, Mishnah Vav, we're talking about the korbanot that were brought during Sukkot. Okay? So, there are a lot of animals that were brought on Sukkot. So, we're talking about essentially the work that the Kohanim were involved with. So, on Sukkot, there were regular jobs that needed to be done, and those regular jobs would be assigned to the mishmar of that week. If you remember what a mishmar is, we've talked about how every single week there would be a family of Kohanim that would be responsible for all of the work in the Beis HaMikdash. Right? So they would come to Jerusalem to stay for a week, and then they would go back to their own hometowns, and that's known as a mishmar. It's like a rota or a rotation. So the mishmar who would be assigned to the week of Sukkot, they would have the regular jobs that they would need to do. But the special additional work that needed to be done for Sukkot, that would be split amongst all of the other mishmarot, all of the other families of the rotation. And that's because there was a lot to do, and they're all there because they've all come up to the Beis HaMikdash for the Shalosh Regalim, so they're there for Sukkot. So there is a bunch of other stuff that needed to be processed. So I will do my best to explain this. So there were 70 bulls, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right? 13 plus 12 plus 11 plus 10 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7. Does that equal 70? 25, 36, 46. Yeah. So there's 70 bulls. And it starts on 13 and it goes down to 7 as the days of Sukkot progress, right? So day 1 is 13, day 2 is 12, day 3 is 11, 10, 9, 8, and 7. Additionally to that, they brought 2 rams every single day and 1 goat every single day, which means that on day 1 there was 16 animals that needed to be brought, 15 on day 2, 14 on day 3. That's the total of the number of bulls, rams, and goats that would be brought during the days of Sukkot. In addition to that, there were 14 sheep that were brought every single day, and they were divided up amongst the different mishmarot. Okay, with that in mind, let's give this one a go. Yom Tov is quite detailed in terms of keeping track of all the numbers. Yom Tov Harishon Shel Chag, the first day of Sukkot. Hayu Sham Shlosha Asar Parim, they would bring 13 bulls, Ve'elim Shnayim V'Sa'ir Echad, 2 rams and 1 goat. Nishtayru Sham Arba Asar Kvasim Lishmona Mishmaros. This would leave over 14 lambs that would go to 8 of the Mishmarot. 6 of those Mishmarot would take 2 each, and 2 of the Mishmarot would take 1, parenthetically. By Yom no, it's not parenthetically, it's going to tell us that. By Yom HaRishon, on the first day, Shisha Makravim Shnayim Shnayim, 6 of the families of the rota would sacrifice 2 each. V'hashar echad echad, and 2 mishmarot would sacrifice 1 sheep each. Basheni, on day 2, Chamisha makrivim shnayim shnayim, 5 would offer up 2 sheep each, v'hashar echad echad, and then 4 would sacrifice 1 each, because it's split between 9 mishmarot. Bashlishi, on the 3rd day, arba makrivim shnaim shnaim, 4 are sacrificing 2 each, v'hashar echad echad, and 6 are going to be sacrificing 1 each, because there are 10 mishmarot that it goes to. Baravi, on the 4th day, shlosha makrivim shnaim shnaim, 3 groups are sacrificing 2 each, v'hashar echad echad, and 8 are sacrificing 1, which is splitting between 11 mishmarot. B'chamishi shnaim makrivim shnaim shnaim, on the 5th day, 2 groups are sacrificing 2 each, which leaves 10, v'hashar echad echad, 10 which are sacrificing 1 lamb each. Bashishi, on the 3rd day, when there are 13 mishmarot to allocate amongst, echad makriv shnayim, 1 group sacrifice 2, v'hashar, the remaining 12, sacrifice 1 each, echad echad. Bashvi, on the 7th day, everyone is given equal amount to sacrifice. Kulan shavin, they are all equal, and so 14 groups are given 1 lamb each to sacrifice. Bashmini, on Shmini Atzeres, chazru lapayis kebar galin. On the 8th day, they cast lots. They have a lottery system to be able to determine who is going to be shechting what, which means that they take a lottery to determine who's going to deal with 1 bull, 1 ram, 1 goat, and 7 sheep, which are the offerings that were brought especially for Shmini Atzeres. Amru, Misha Hikriv Parim Hayom, they would say that whichever watch is allocated the responsibility for the bulls on 1 day, Lo Yakriv L'Machar, they should not be allocated anything on the next day, but they should take their turns in a circle, take their turns in rotation. So, let me see, I must have missed something here, right? Where's the number 24 mishmarot in all of this? There's 24 mishmarot in total. So, have I missed anything in the explanation of that? Anyone want to chime in? Or is that more or less clear? I mean, if you've got it, that's fantastic. Amazing that, I mean, the maths all make sense, but why are the mishmarot changing? Why the number 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14? Why is that changing each day? Divided into 24 mishmarot, and every week they would have a different one working, but on the regalim, everyone was involved. Ah, 13. What's 13 plus 8? Oh, okay. I've just worked out the maths, people. All right, so we've got 24 mishmarot in total. On day 1, when there were 16 sacrifices, right? The 13 bulls, the 2 rams, the 1 goat. Brilliant, this is magical. Why didn't I figure this out sooner? It would have made more sense to me. So on day 1, when there are 16 animals, there's 13 bulls, there's 2 rams, there's 1 goat. So that's 16 mishmarot dealing with that, which means we've now got 8 leftover mishmarot. 8 leftover mishmarot, and we have to divide 14 lambs between them. Now it all makes sense. Okay, so everyone can replay that whole Mishnah in their heads, and now the maths makes sense. So there's 8 leftover mishmarot because everybody else is working on those other animals, and that's why we have this permutation of 6 taking 2 animals each, 2 taking 1 animal each, and then the next day it's 9 mishmarot left over, and then it's 10 mishmarot left over, and then it's 11 and 12 and 13 and 14. Baruch Hashem, it all makes sense. I got there in the end. Hands up if you need me to repeat that one. I'm not seeing many hands going up in the air. Moving on then to Mishnah Zayin, the 7th Mishnah in our final parak. Says the Mishnah, B'shloisha parakim b'shana, 3 points, periods in the year, Hayu kol hamishmaros shavos beimore ha-regalim. The Kohanim would share equally in the limbs of the korbanot that were taking place during the festivals of a chiluk lechem hapanim, and in the distribution of the lechem hapanim, of the showbread. So they would get an equal portion in the fats of the Yom Tov korbanos and of the lechem hapanim and of the showbread if it was falling on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah, but Seres on Shavuos, Omrim Lo, they used to say to them, Heilach matzah, heilach chametz. They used to say, here is matzah for you, and here is chametz for you. Why would they say that? Because of the different types of things, right? Here is your matzah from the lechem hapanim, and here is your chametz from the shtei halechem. So when they were distributing the portions that would be given to the Kohanim on Shavuos, they would get a bit from the lechem hapanim, from the showbread, which they called matzah, and they would get a bit from the shtei halechem, from the 2 loaves that were brought especially for Shavuos. So each Kohen would receive a piece from the showbread and also from the shtei halechem. Continues the Mishnah. Mishmar shezmano kavua, the Mishmar who were appointed for that week. Is that right? Yeah. So they were on the rota for that particular week. Hayu makriv tamidim, they would be in charge of bringing the daily offerings. Nadarim and Nadavos, as well as the vow offerings and the voluntary offerings. Ushar korbanos sibur, and all of the public offerings. Umakriv esakol, and they would offer all of them. Yom Tov hasamach l'Shabbos, if Yom Tov fell next to Shabbos, bein milfaneha bein milachareha, where the Yom Tov went into Shabbos, or Shabbos went into Yom Tov, hayu kol mishmaros Shabbos bechiluk lechem hapanim, they would all receive an equal distribution of the lechem hapanim, and that was in order to get all of the kohanim there on time. That was what they did to be able to do that. They would give everyone an equal piece. Moving on to the final Mishnah of chapter 5, and the final Mishnah, ladies and gentlemen, for Maseches Sukkah. So says the Mishnah, Chal liyos yom echad lahafsik bein sayin. If there was one day that would separate between Shabbos and Yom Tov, or Yom Tov and Shabbos, Mishmar shezmano kavua, the Mishmar, the family who would be appointed for that next week, and they're switching on Shabbos, Haya notel eser chalos, they take 10 loaves. V'hamisakev notel shtaim, and the Kohanim from the previous week, they receive 2 loaves. And they're called the detained ones because they're having to stick around longer because they can't just go home. With Vishar Yemos Hashana and all the other days of the year, when they're having a transition each week between 2 shifts, Hanichnas Notel Shesh, the incoming family of Kohanim, the incoming Mishnah have 6 loaves, the Hayotze Notel Shesh, and the outgoing shift takes 6 loaves. Rabbi Yehuda says, Hanichnas Notel Sheva, that normally what would happen is the incoming shift would take 7, V'hayotze notel chamesh, and the outgoing shift would take 5. Hanichnasin cholkim b'tzafon, the ones who are coming in would stand on the northern side, v'hayotzin b'darom, and the outgoing shift would be standing on the southern side. And the reason for that is because the north side of the Beis HaMikdash is actually holier than the south side of the Beis HaMikdash. And so that's why the incoming Kohanim would stand on the northern side, and the outgoing Kohanim would stand on the southern side. And now we come, finishing off Mishnah Sukkah, we come to the Mishmar of Bilga. They have a particular, they are singled out, and that is because their name is forever tarnished. They were penalized. They were a family of Kohanim that appeared to have been penalized, I believe, on account of one of the daughters marrying a Greek minister. One of their daughters married out. And it tells us the story somewhere where when the Greeks entered the Beis HaMikdash at the time of Hanukkah, oh, look at that. It's right, learning this at the right time of year. So when the Greeks entered the Beis HaMikdash before the miracle of Hanukkah occurred, this daughter, Bilga, she kicked, or I don't know actually that her name was Bilga, but this daughter who married a Greek minister, she kicked the Mizbeach, and she called it a fox, and talked about how it destroys and eats Jews' money, I guess because people just come and they chuck all their sacrifices and they pay inordinate amounts of money, and she said it doesn't give people any help. So that was what happened to this daughter of this family. And as a result of that, we're taught that they suffered 3 penalties. One penalty is that they always received their lechem hapanim on the south side. They did not get to stand on the north side when they received their portion of the showbread. They always had to borrow a padlock. Why did they have to borrow a padlock? Because there were 24 rings around the Mizbeach, which were allocated to each of the 24 mishmarot. And these rings would hold the necks of the animals. So they each had their own, custom space in the Beis HaMikdash to process their animals. And their one was locked up. And as a result of that, they would have to, borrow one of the other spaces to be able to process korbanot because they were penalized in this way. And the third is that their lockers, essentially, their lockers were sealed up in the antechamber of the Heichal, which we've not really spoken about much, but we encounter it in other places. So there was a room which was essentially the living quarters of the Kohanim, and in these living quarters they had 96 windows. All right, each of the 24 families had 4 windows where their uniforms were kept. The different parts of their uniform were kept in different windows, and all 4 of their windows, all 4 of their lockers, let's call it, they were all sealed up as a penalty to this particular family. So the final part of the Mishnah tells us, Bilga la'olam chalekes b'daram, as a penalty for having this daughter that not only married out, but married out and defiled the temple, or shared in the responsibility for defiling the temple. They would always be given their portions on the inferior side, on the southern side, the less holy side. The tabata kavua, and their ring was bolted up, and they weren't able to use it for processing their animals. V'chalona sasuma, and their windows, their alcoves, their lockers, whatever you want to call it, they were all sealed up, and they weren't allowed to have access to those areas. Mazel tov, everybody, on finishing Masechet Sukkah, and we finish with 3 words. So repeat after me: Salik Maseches Sukkah, Salik Maseches Sukkah, Salik Maseches Sukkah. Mazel tov, ladies and gentlemen, on finishing Masechet Sukkah. Very exciting, and that's all we've got time for, guys. So join us next week, and we will start properly with Masechet Beitzah. Very exciting. It is a little bit trickier in parts than Masechet Sukkah, but hopefully we'll navigate it together. Be really exciting. Looking forward to doing that with you guys next week. For now, have a wonderful and meaningful night.